Okay, go ahead.
Okay, as a preliminary matter, this is Brooke Moore, Vice Chair of the Nantucket Affordable Housing Trust. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Rima Sherry?
Aye.
Penny Dye?
Aye.
Allison Mitchell?
Aye.
Dave Iverson?
Aye.
Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Tucker Holland?
Aye.
Ken Bogrand?
Aye.
Eller Antonietti?
Yes.
Did I say Eller? Eleanor. Okay. I see we have some members of the public, no other anticipated speakers. Is that correct, Tucker?
We are anticipating Judy Barrett and Jen Goldson.
Right.
They're going to join at 1:15.
Okay, but not currently with us to acknowledge them. Okay, so good afternoon. This open meeting of the Nantucket Affordable Housing Trust is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of the public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with the agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely, so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment to those members of the public that have joined via Zoom. For this meeting, the Nantucket Affordable Housing Trust is convening via video conference via the Zoom app as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured in the recording. I'm getting feedback. Can folks mute themselves? Please, thank you.
I'm muted.
Howard, I think you need to mute.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, all supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I note otherwise. We are now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair, I, will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in a conversation with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. For items with public comment, after members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment as follows. After members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment to those members of the public that have joined the meeting via Zoom. Members of the public who wish to speak must state their names and be acknowledged by and speak through the chair. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. And boy, I can't wait till the days when we don't have to do that anymore. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda, and I'm going to ask, we are going to postpone the financial discussion, item number 5, until our next meeting in January. And because our guests are joining us at 1:15, we're going to dispense with items, Roman numeral 6 and 7, RFP update and communication subcommittee report before the housing production plan work session. So if I could have a motion to approve the agenda with those changes.
I'm sorry, just one quick interruption. Did you say we're postponing 5, 6, and 7 to the next meeting?
No, postponing 5 to the next meeting and moving 6 and 7 to before 4.
Thank you.
So we're going to address those first. Okay, so may I have a motion
So
to approve?
moved.
Okay, Rima moved. Do I have a second? Allison second. By roll call vote. Rima,
Aye.
Ally,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
and I vote aye.
Who made the motion?
Okay.
Sorry, I'm trying to catch up. I apologize.
That's okay. Rima made the motion and Allison seconded.
Thank you.
And Brooke, you for
Oh, and Penny,
Penny.
sorry. Penny?
aye.
Okay,
aye.
sorry about that, Penny. I'm not seeing your face.
Yeah,
Thank
we
you for
can't
the
see you,
reminder.
Penny. We want to see you.
Oh, I'm here. I'm on the phone because I get to, and I thought I'd do this in the car. So I'm getting there.
Okay, no worries. If I forget again, just speak up, please.
I will.
Okay, so we're moving to trust proposed new RFP, and I'll hand it to Tucker.
Sorry, did you approve the minutes there or?
Oh, sorry. Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes. May I have a motion? Are there,
So moved.
Second.
Dave moved, Rima second. Any corrections or amendments? Okay, seeing none, all by roll call. Rima,
Aye.
Ally,
Aye.
Penny,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
and Brooke votes aye. Okay, now moving on to trust proposed new RFP update. Tucker, please.
Yeah, we've been working with town council and procurement on finalizing some of the details of that. So the plan is for that to get issued on January 6th is the date. So our next meeting, I know I'm jumping ahead a little here, but we're planning for the trust to convene at 1 o'clock on Tuesday, January 5th. And then the normal meeting would be on Tuesday, January 19th. So 2 meetings in January. So we'll have sort of a final update at that January 5th meeting, but we're working to have this go out January 6th.
Any questions from the board? Any questions from the public? Hearing none, I'll close that item and we'll move on to communication subcommittee report. Rima, anything to report?
No, nothing to report at this time. No.
Tucker, did you have anything you wanted to say on this topic? Okay. Any other members of the board?
Actually, one thing, Brooke, I still have a robust supply of very cool affordable housing trust stickers, courtesy of Mr. Iverson. Please stop by and pick one up.
Will you stick some in the plus box, Tucker?
I will.
Thanks.
Great, thanks, Tucker. Thanks for the reminder. I don't get out much anymore. I guess we were too quick, so let's hope our guests arrive in the next couple of minutes.
Actually, Judy Barrett is here.
Oh, Judy is here. Should we wait for Jen, or Judy, do you want to get started?
Hold on, I am, what am I doing? I'm starting my video, I'm unmuting. They should all be on in a couple of minutes, and I know she has a schedule she wants to share with you to kind of update you on all those dates that we had discussed that we had to move. So I think what we should do, if you have something else you can do for a couple of minutes, I think it's probably best, just so I don't jump ahead of her. But I know we have a pretty good and realistic schedule at this point for all the engagement that needs to happen between the survey and meetings and interviews and so forth. that I know we want to go over with you today. The survey questions are still in review. I got a draft of it last night. I've taken a look at it. I've given some feedback back to Jen, and so I'm imagining that in the next day or so, we'll be able to send you a link with that so you can review it and get any comments back to us so that we can move that live. And I think that that's probably the bulk of what we need to talk about today, is just to get those dates locked in, because they're so critical for us and for the whole structure of this project.
Thanks,
So,
Judy.
I don't-
So I just, so we'll wait a couple minutes here, no problem at all for Jen. I was going to maybe use this time to jump ahead to these, like our meeting dates, which are separate and apart from what Judy and Jen are going to get into. But I just wanted to see, for the trust members are on the line anyway, does that January 5th meeting as proposed at 1 o'clock work for the folks who are here?
Brooke, you're muted, Brooke.
I know, I'm trying.
Tucker, repeat that
Clicking and
again. I was in the middle of doing something else. Sorry.
Tucker, could you please say the date again? January what?
Yes. So we're proposing having a second January meeting, if you will, on Tuesday, January 5th at 1 o'clock. So our usual
Okay.
time, but that would be the first Tuesday. And then we would have our regular third Tuesday, January meeting at 1 o'clock on the 19th of January.
Both of those work for me.
Thank you.
That's me too.
Yeah,
Thank you.
me too.
Thank you.
Alice shaking her head, yes. Okay, and I'm available for both as well.
Okay, thanks, everybody. Eleanor, is there anything additional, any like housekeeping stuff we want to take care of while we have a couple of moments here?
Well, yes, actually, and I should have thought of this before. I apologize. My bad. We should have set our meeting schedule for 2021, so we'll have to approve that at our January either 5th or 19th meeting, so that I can post it on the website. I can post a provisional to be approved schedule for the public on the AHT website, but sorry, that slipped my mind to do that.
So we've confirmed January meetings.
Right, but it's good to have it
So,
posted on the website, and I completely been doing it for 4 other boards, and I forgot about this one. I apologize.
so
But
let me just ask this group, does the time that we've been meeting, which is the third Tuesday of the month at 1 p.m. still work for people's schedules going into 2021?
Yes, it works for me, Penny.
Okay, I see Dave shaking his head, yes. Ally,
Yes,
yes.
works for me.
Okay, so we have certainly the majority, and then obviously the chair. So we'll have to
to put
confirm
it
everything,
as
and then we'll vote on it.
okay. Yeah, we'll have to put it as an agenda item on the January meeting. But I can certainly put something, or with Tucker's approval, on the website for the interim.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so is everybody here, Judy and team, that needs to be here?
I just sent Jen a text message. I'm a bit surprised we do not have her yet.
There she is.
just came
Here
on.
she comes. Just popped in.
Sorry. There you are. Didn't I just see you a few minutes ago?
Hi. I know I had to run and get a quick lunch before.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
No, it's okay.
So before I turn it over to you guys, I'm going to remind everybody who is not muted, Dave Iverson, to mute. And so we don't have feedback for you. And I will now hand it over to our HPP team.
Super. So I'm on, Jen is on, my colleague Catherine Dennison, who's going to be working on this project, is on, and momentarily, I think Tyler Myron will be joining us as well. We don't need to wait. He can just join in when.
I'm here,
Tyler,
Judy.
Tyler's here.
There you
I'm
are.
here. Hi.
Tyler. Hi. You just sent me a message and said you were about to hop on. I just didn't see your face yet. Jen, I know you had put together kind of updated dates, and maybe you want to go ahead and share that if you have screen sharing ability, and I'll mute myself so you can talk.
Yeah, that sounds good. And I'm just making sure, I think Barry didn't have the Zoom link, so I just sent it over to him. He's probably going to join from my team as well. All right. So hopefully you can see, can you see my screen now? Just give me a thumbs up. Yeah, okay, good. So we did adjust the dates based on the new timeline. And so hopefully this is big enough. It looks kind of small on my screen because I'm on a huge monitor, but is this kind of big enough for everybody? Okay, good. So you'll see that we have the kickoff meeting.
Jen, if you can make it a little bigger,
Yep.
that would be great. Thank you.
Yep, I think I can. Okay. Is that good?
It didn't really, the text didn't get any bigger, but
All right, hold on. Let me do it this way.
there we go. That's better.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
So we have a draft survey that's just about ready to show you. I think we have some last few revisions to make. Judy and our team were kind of going back and forth on it a little bit, but I think we should have that ready either by the end of the day or early tomorrow to share a link with all of you. And it'll just be a preview link, so you can essentially take the survey, but it won't record your answers. And what you'll want to do is take it a number of different ways. And when we email it out to you, we'll tell you what are the different answers you can give that will send you to different questions. So we have a bunch of looping in there. So you'll want to answer, just as an example, you'll want to answer at least one time through that you're a resident, another time through that you're not a resident. You know, maybe you own a business or you work on the island. So just answer it a few different ways, and we'll tell you in an email, like, these are the 4 or 5 different ways that you should try to answer. Meeting with you today. And then what we'd like is, you can have a little time to go back and forth, get us some changes. And then I believe that when we last met in October, you were talking about getting it translated potentially into a few different languages. So I wanted to make sure we had some time to talk about that. And I don't know how readily accessible your translators are and how, quickly they can do it. But what we usually do is we usually create a copy of the survey right in SurveyMonkey, and then we would share our login information with the translator, and they could just go right in and translate everything right into the survey. That's been the easiest way for us, rather than taking something in writing or some other format where we then have to put it in just because we may do something wrong and not even realize it. So we would just need the names of, who we're working with, how many languages you want, and then we can coordinate. And really over the next few weeks, this can slide a little bit if the translators need a little more time. What I'd like to do is launch the survey sometime before the first webinar. I just put the latest date. We could launch it a little earlier if it's ready earlier, but as long as it's launched by the date of the first webinar, what I'd like to do is just be able to make an announcement that it's live during the webinar, and provide the link there. And then we typically leave them up for about a month. There's nothing magical about that. We could do it shorter if you want, but there's nothing demanding in the schedule that would require it to be shorter. So oftentimes what we do is we keep a close watch on how are we doing with the responses, report back to you. Do we need to do another push on outreach? Are there other ways that you can push the word out? Are there, we look at the demographics carefully too, and tell you if we think we're getting a, relatively representative sample, or if you're, not getting as many low income households, or, whatever the demographics are telling us. And then we would want to coordinate with you to just figure out, are there other ways that you can push it out and do more outreach to sort of reach those targeted groups if we're finding that they're some underrepresented groups. So that'll kind of happen during the course of the survey, and we would want to report back to you. We can watch what with the demographic questions that we usually have at the end, just so people don't get too annoyed with us. So anyway, so that's the plan for the survey. Then there's the first webinar, which thank you for giving us that date. That works perfectly. And then what we would like to do is set up focus groups. We have 5 total, and we can do up to 8 people each. And I do need to be strict about that. I may even start saying to clients that I can only do up to 7 each, because I've found that, people are kind of pushing me over the 8, and I get why, people are like, well, it's just one more person. But the truth is it's because we're doing this in a setting that's, number one, it's all digital on Zoom. So there's a bit of a coordination, and there's a little bit of a lag time when you're talking in groups. But also I think that the discussion is more robust when we try to keep the cap on the number of people. And I think people are able to contribute more when we keep the cap. So I would like to keep that as a 8 max. So why don't we say 7 to 8 people? And we'd like to schedule those. We can talk about exactly what times of days you'd like. What we typically do is during the course of those couple weeks, we try to pick different times. So we might pick a morning time, an afternoon time, even a lunchtime, or an evening. It depends on when you think, people will most likely be available. And we usually just try to hold it at different times of the day so people can sort of pick which one they come to. The other piece of the logistics of the focus groups are, we would need a list of up to 40. Oh, I should have done my math. I think it's up to 40 people. Somebody tell me if I just did my math wrong. I'm terrible with my very basic multiplication tables. And so what we would do is we create a Google Sheet usually, and just have it shareable for you all to add names that you'd like to focus on in terms of different stakeholders. And we'd emphasize, what we usually recommend is that you try to pick a variety of, people with a variety of perspectives, so that we hear from, maybe we hear from open space advocates in addition to housing advocates, or town officials, or other entities that are active in housing and active in preservation or conservation, or maybe you have different representatives of different population groups on the island, representation from different areas of the island. So, I don't want to micromanage who you put on, but just in terms of thinking, how can you get a variety of perspectives? Because our hope is that we'll hear kind of the spectrum of perspectives on the island that you typically will hear, either objectors to housing as an example, or I'm sure there are all sorts of angles that you hear. So that's what we would recommend. And maybe you've already done some thinking about this, because I know when we met back in October, we did a little bit of talking about this already and who you might want to invite. But I'd like to get that list started very soon. We can give you the Google Sheet, even tomorrow, if you want to start to populate it. And what committees typically do is they will, you can maybe even just coordinate a little bit today if there's room on the agenda for that. But what they typically do is kind of crowdsource ideas for who you'd like to invite. And then you might need to curate that list if you end up coming up with more names than we can fit. And you can just start adding them right into the Google Sheet, and we'll give you the 40 person limit, so you can sort of see when you've gotten there. And then once you have that list, then we're happy to provide the text for you. But typically what we find is the invites should really come from the client group, from either maybe it's Tucker, or if you have relationships with some of the people on the list, coming from you directly will mean more than the consultant sending some email and they don't know who we are. So we just don't get as good of a response because we don't have those relationships. But we're happy to support you, provide you with the language to describe it that you can feel free to customize and make kind of into your own. So that's how we typically do it. And then we create a sign up genius. with the time slots and the maximum of 8 people in each, and people can just go in and pick a time and the date that works the best for them. So I would want to get those out, you know, ideally, you know, what is it, the 15th now? You know, if we could get them out um, before, you know, I don't know what people's holiday schedules like this year, but typically if we could get it out before the end of next week, that would be ideal. So maybe target early next week to get the invite out. That would be perfect because it gives people a good amount of lead time. Hopefully they're not booked during those weeks already. I would really try to do that rather than waiting until the beginning of January. I think the closer you get into those dates, the more conflicts people will end up having and the less successful we'll be at getting people to come. And then I just threw in the next housing trust meeting just so you can see sort of the rhythm of your meetings. You have more meetings after this schedule ends. I just focused on the engagement part, but did include plug in the trust meetings. So we would want to have a trust meeting with you in February to go over. At that point, we'll have closed the survey and have the focus group results as well. We'd want to tell you what we're learning. And then we'd also want to work with you on outreach for the next webinar. We have time before that, but it's really not too early to start doing the save the date and kind of giving people an update on where the process is. And then you have another trust meeting in March, and then the second webinar would be March 23rd. And that webinar, just to give you the sense of the difference between the two, I feel like we might have already gone over this, but just as a refresher, the first webinar is really before much has been done. It's really saying, you know, in the public eye, this is the project we're working on. Before we get too deep into it, we'd really like to hear some preliminary community feedback and give sort of an overview of the schedule, the scope, and why you're even doing this project, but really have it more focused on community input. And so the way we've been structuring these webinars is we will scatter it with polling so folks can contribute kind of throughout the presentation. We also have different questions to kind of prime the pump in the chat using the chat function so that people are kind of giving us their opinions and asking questions through the chat throughout the entire presentation. And then also in a period of time, I just did one of these last night and we had almost an hour left for people just to give comments and ask questions. And we had the panel is typically, the consultant team, but then you may also want to have, Tucker, maybe members of the steering committee or the trust rather. You should talk about who you want to have kind of a face on that webinar. You may not all have a speaking role, or some of you might. We could talk about that. Typically what happens at these webinars is the consultants will take the lead of the speaking role. Somebody will give an introduction from the community. And then Judy and I, or members of her team, will kind of go through, what is this project? Why are you doing it? How can you get engaged? What will potentially be the result of it? And then I would facilitate just some general questions, and they're usually focused on, what opportunities do you see? What challenges do you see? And do you have any ideas that you think should be considered as part of the plan? And then we just do an open also Q&A, and panelists meaning us and the trust members, anybody you decide should be kind of have a video and a voice on that webinar, will then be able to just respond live to questions and comments and provide other information. And that sort of is, I would say, the bulk of it. That's the first one. The second one, at that point, the idea here is that there'll be more to share. We'll have community engagement that will have already digested, so we can report back on what did we learn through the first webinar, the survey, and the focus groups. And then we can also talk about some preliminary strategy ideas that we want to kind of bounce off the community members who are participating in the webinar, and ask for their reactions to those and any other suggestions. And then it's after that that the plan really is written in full with all of that as the basis. So it's kind of a whirlwind. You may have questions. I don't know if I skipped over things. I couldn't remember exactly what I already covered last time, so I didn't want to repeat myself too much, but I did want to just share kind of the way it would flow. But let me pause and just take questions. And Judy, if you want to chime in on anything.
I actually just want to mention a couple of things. Thank you, because that was wonderful. One of the things I wanted to mention, having worked on Nantucket before, I will just say this: if it becomes an issue trying to keep the focus groups to 7 people, if there is a necessity to pick up some additional folks, we could add another focus group, and we could do it, Jen, instead of putting another one on you. So
Okay,
I just want to
All
make
right.
that open to people. If it looks like there are just folks who've got to get covered and there's just more people than slots available for a focus group, we could add another focus group or 2. And so we'll just worry about that. I would say, tell us who you want us to talk to first, and then we'll sort out the logistics on it. The other thing I want to point out is that around the time of that February 16th Housing Trust meeting, we will have finished at least the research work and distilling information from the needs assessment. So at that February 16th Housing Trust meeting, we would at least be having kind of a slide deck to show you. I don't want to try to commit to having a narrative done, but this is kind of what we know. Jen's going to talk about what we've learned from the community engagement process, but then there's also this, the sort of factual research that needs to take place, and these 2 things need to come together. So I'm anticipating for that February 16th meeting that we would at least have the beginnings of this kind of what we've learned from the other research, the needs assessment, because we will want to be thinking about that as the scaffolding for what becomes the recommendations of the plan that would be then discussed at the second webinar. So there's other information going on here, and it's iterative, as Jen said. It's between the engagement work and the research work, and these things are going to have to kind of go back and forth together to come up with a coherent whole. So that's all I wanted to say.
So it's Penny. I have a quick question for Judy, I think, if I might. Are there sectors that you have felt in the past when going through similar processes here on Nantucket were underrepresented?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, in some ways, yes, I think so. I think that we never really sort of had, and I'm not blaming anybody saying this, I'm just thinking back to who I've spoken with. I think a lot of time was spent talking with thought leaders.
Yep.
And maybe not enough time talking with people who actually had real on the ground urgent housing needs.
Yep.
And it was always kind of a little concern I had that we're sort of hearing the opinions of people who are trying to do something, but I'm not really sure that I don't have a way to sort of validate that maybe those are the most important things that need to happen. And what is it actually like to try to live on this island and sleep on someone's couch,
So I raise it for this exact reason that you followed up with reasons, which I think we really need to include some sort of leaders within the communities that are perhaps culturally most impacted by this. And I'm thinking of somebody like Maria Partida, maybe, or if there are maybe leaders in the non-English speaking communities. I think we need to involve people from those sectors.
May I say something, Madam Chair?
Excuse me 1 second. Jen, would you mind stopping the screen share so I can
Oh, of
see
course.
everybody?
Yep.
It's really hard to chair a meeting
No worries.
with only 5 faces.
There you
That's
go.
great. Okay. So Eleanor, yes, you wanted to make a
Well,
remark?
I
Thank you,
imagine,
Penny.
Brooke, you're going to be thinking what I'm thinking, because you were involved with the census work. There were a lot of people. I was on the committee for the 2020 census, what it was worth at the end of the day. But we worked really hard. Brooke helped with that. And we did a lot of outreach to immigrant communities and faith communities and vulnerable populations and at-risk populations. So there is a sort of a baseline. I know Brooke and I could put our heads together and come up with a list of those people. I have a list already. So that's a starter to access, spokespeople or people who are in direct connection to helping those more vulnerable populations.
Another quick follow-up would be something like, I know that Renee Seeley often talks about how many years people are on the waiting list for housing authority properties. Obviously, Renee is somebody who should be included, but maybe there are people who have been waiting for a long time that might have a different perspective than some of the just pure advocacy ones.
That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
And
So-
I just think it's hard to organize, right? So I don't think that we ever really connected with those folks. But I always felt that it was a gap in my knowledge because I was hearing everything secondhand or third.
Yeah. Thank you.
Anyone else from the board want to chime in at this point? I'm going to, seeing no hands raised, literally or otherwise. Tucker.
Just one, I mean, I think that was an excellent discussion there and very important to have those representatives and voices. In terms of, I guess, from your experience in other communities, like how important do you think it is to have, for example, the whole select board, all 5 members, be part of a focus group versus 1 or 2 who are perhaps representative of that group and groups like it, such as the planning board, et cetera?
Go ahead, Jen.
Yeah, I mean, my experience is that typically communities will send a few representatives that they, if you have folks that sit on those, boards who are already engaged in those topics, and, that's typically who they would send. Occasionally we have done, if you put them all together, they might be spread out, not in one meeting, but sort of spread out. We may touch all the planning board members. That sort of depends on the community, but I think it's more common to send a couple representatives who really dig into those issues to begin with. The only caveat I would say to that is just from a kind of political strategy point of view is if you have really, some political divisions on those boards, then it would actually be good for us to tap into what are those divisions and hear a little bit from, not to make it seem black and white, because I know that this is much more complex usually, but to just think about that a little bit too.
I would like to reiterate, and I'm not sure how we manage this in the focus group setting, but language in the webinars in particular, maybe exploring the idea of having a Portuguese and Spanish translator available if someone wants to attend and would prefer to communicate in their native language. And we do have folks in the community who have served in this role and are often willing to do so. Some do it as work and others do it as volunteer. So we can, I think it's important to supplement and make sure that our outreach is also in those languages, and people know that there will be interpreter services available.
Yeah.
So we're doing more and more of that across, increasingly across our public meetings.
Great.
Hopefully lots more in the years to come.
Good.
So
It's
any other? Yep. Penny?
Yeah, it's Penny again, sorry. What, just as a follow-up to that, in terms of languages that we get things transferred or translated into, what would it be besides Spanish and Portuguese? Any others?
So I'll speak to my experience with COVID response from the hospital, that
Yep.
we also initially did a lot of translation into Bulgarian, and the Bulgarian community, the folks who helped us with that in the end felt that it was not as necessary as most. They found that the majority of folks who emigrate from Bulgaria have English, enough English that the translation is not required at the same level as the Portuguese or Spanish, was the feedback we got. So the Bulgarian kind of dropped off
Thank you.
months into the process. So
Thanks.
But those are the primary, we have many, many languages represented in our community. So the other thing we can do is provide the resources for a recording of the meeting to be put up on the government YouTube page, and NCTV has the capacity to turn on subtitles as well after the fact. So people can go back and watch and have subtitled, the entire thing subtitled. But I think having live translation and interpreter services for people who want to ask questions or contribute would be really helpful. Any other comments on? Oh, do you have any, I had a question. Do you have any participation limits on the webinars, or are they open?
I have a webinar subscription that allows 500 people.
That should probably be fine. But you don't impose any limits for?
No, I don't impose any limits. And one thing to check, we did run in recently, there was some debate as to, we've done this both ways. For some communities, we've required registration, and for other communities, we have not. And there was some disagreement about, what open meeting laws would require in terms of, I know for Zoom webinars, or the webinar I'm talking about is different from the meeting. So I don't remember if we discussed this, or maybe you're already familiar, but the meetings is like this, where everybody has a video. The webinars, only the panelists have a video and audio capacity. And what we've done in the past is had registration turned on. You don't have to have a Zoom account, but you do have to provide your name and email address in order to get the Zoom link. And the Zoom links are all individual, so people actually can't share them with each other. They have to register. Other communities felt like they needed to not require registration. And so I'm not going to give you a legal opinion on that. I just want to raise it, that I've done it both ways, and communities have a disagreement about, so you may want to look at that unless you've already looked at that, but we could do it either way. The issue with not registering is you don't actually necessarily know who's on the webinar. You don't have a name or an email attached, and people can just share the link. There's not as much issue with Zoom bombing in a webinar because it's such a controlled platform. So just a couple, kind of the pros and cons, but I just want to bring up that legal concern. You may want to just look into that and see what Nantucket Council recommends.
Okay, thanks, Jen. There are compelling reasons to go both directions on that. Yeah. Easy access versus controlling, who comes. So, any other questions or comments from the board? Is there anyone from the, Rima, go ahead.
Is there more participation in your experience having unregistered or registered?
We didn't find from our experience that that's what made the difference. It was more the kind of the culture in the community and how kind of in the public eye housing issues happen to be in that community. So, if there's a lot of 40Bs or, a lot of things making the news, then we tend to get a better turnout. And if it's kind of a sleepier community in regard to that, then we get a little bit of a less turnout. But I didn't find that having registration on or off made a difference.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone else who'd like to say anything? Staff, public? All right. So hearing nothing further, do you have everything for us that you need, Jen and Judy, at this point to move forward? We'll get that list together of people for the focus groups ASAP.
Yeah, and I think last time I was just looking back at my notes. I think we talked about doing an outreach subcommittee, and my memory is, Brooke, that you had volunteered to do that with it. And I'll have to look back through my notes to see who else, but it would be good to get outreach materials, start to push them out. And I would love to set up a small meeting, maybe even later this week or early next week if people are available, to just get that going and start to get that outreach out. This would be for the webinar on the 12th.
So we have a communication subcommittee, so we
That's
can get that going.
Okay, and is the communication subcommittee, is that required to have a public notice?
So we need to double check on that because we have not to date, but I'm also chair of another town committee where I'm getting different advice regarding that. So I need to clarify that. But the communications subcommittee as it stands is myself, Rima, and Dave. And so technically, I believe based on the input I'm getting from the other council that we're supposed to post those meetings. So
That's my understanding too.
So, Brooke,
Okay.
I think it's Penny here again. Brooke, I think it has to do with the decision-making process. And you've always brought things to the actual full committee for votes.
yes, and I'm getting a different
Right.
set of recommendations for Council for Human Services.
Okay,
That
so
differs
you'll
from that.
That's great.
So
Yeah.
we'll clarify it, but Jen, why don't you reach out through Tucker
Yeah.
and we'll get a read on that. And Eleanor, if we need to post it, we need to post it, right? So we'll have to get it on the Zoom schedule for the town and
Yeah.
do it more formally. So
Yeah, and so if I'll just assume that that's probably the case, and I'll give you some dates for early next week so that you have enough time to post it then.
Right.
okay.
Okay, great. Thank you.
That's great. All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Eleanor, for that. Okay. So do we as a group want to start the discussion of who should be on the list, or Tucker, do you want to handle that electronically after the meeting's over?
Yeah, I think we've got a good starter, and why don't I circulate that to the group, and please comment and give feedback.
Okay. All right. So we'll do it via electronics. And okay. So thank you very much to the team for being with us today. And I, for one, am very much looking forward to this community engagement, all of it, but particularly the community engagement piece. And I think the conversation we've had today about broadening who we invite to the conversation is a critical one. It's not easy. And we're doing better as a community in that regard across the board, thanks to COVID, one of the positive outcomes of a really terrible situation. So, so I guess I would entertain, is there any other public comment for the meeting today for anything that's not otherwise on the agenda? Howard.
I was curious to hear from Tucker about how the island is doing vis-a-vis staying in safe harbor, because there's been no news for a long time. Time passes. I haven't heard anything coming online. And so I start to worry about slippage of trying to stay in safe harbor. So just a few words to bring us up to speed.
Sure. Our current period runs until June of next summer, and there are a couple of things that have been in the works with regard to extending that. Among them, as well, is the Six Fairgrounds project, which has now been cleared to move forward. So there's several, let's say, irons in the fire with respect to that, and we likely will be getting into more detail in our January meetings. Does that help, Howard?
Yes, thank you.
I would reiterate that it is very much a high priority for us and happening behind the scenes at the moment, and will be public soon. So, any other public comments? Okay, any board comments? Okay, seeing none, does someone want to take a stab at adjourning us to executive session?
No,
Penny,
aren't you
you
doing
ready?
financial? Didn't Tucker say he was? Oh,
No, that's the one we postponed till January, Eleanor. When we first revised the agenda at the beginning.
oh, okay. Sorry, got it.
No worries. No worries. Penny, no?
I have nothing else. Thank you.
No, we need a motion to adjourn to executive session.
I want you to do your usual role.
I don't have it in front of me. I can't do it from memory.
Eleanor, do you think you could do it and then someone could just say so moved?
I think that's okay. The motion
Okay.
was made and seconded to go into executive session to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property where an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body and not return to open session.
So moved.
Okay, so the motion was made by Rima. Do we have a second?
Second.
I'll second.
I heard two and I'm not sure. I heard Penny.
Allison,
So,
I think it was Allison.
oh, and Allison. Okay. By roll call vote, Penny,
Aye.
Allison,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye, sorry about that.
that's okay, Rima,
Aye.
and I vote aye. Did I get everybody? Okay. Great. So Tucker resent the link for the XS. Let's give it 5 minutes, 6 minutes, 2 p.m. exactly. Okay?
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.